How's it going, everyone? I'm Dylan, this is All You Can Board, and this is the first Marvel Champions Hero Preview of 2022. I joked with Carlo on Tuesday. Today I'm filming this on January 27th. I'm not even sure when this is going to be posted yet. I joked with Carlo because the 27th is going to be a big day for us. It's our 2-year anniversary today. We're posting a big update video on our channel. If you haven't seen it yet, go check that out. We launched our Patreon, our Discord, merchandise. We've been engaging with people in the Discord. I had a commitment with my day job that I had to do in the afternoon. I said to Carlo on Tuesday, I bet you anything, Fantasy Flight Games will announce the new Marvel hero on Thursday when I'm completely swamped and I'll have to find a way to try to get this in. So this video is probably coming out a little bit later than it normally would, but it's still hopefully pretty timely. But we have a new hero announcement, and that is Nova. So this is a really exciting pack from what I can tell so far. I mean, I'm excited about all of them, but I really like the direction they're taking with this one. The first thing I want to mention before we even jump into this is just how much I absolutely love the artwork on the cover of the package. I haven't been a huge fan of all the artwork. Like, I wasn't a huge fan of Nebula's artwork on the cover of the actual pack itself, or Valkyrie's, for instance. Nova's might be my favorite of any pack since I got into Marvel Champions. The bright colors, the vibrancy of it, it is so beautiful. I love it. It's gonna be one of those ones that when I pick up from the store, it's just gonna be a joy to look at. So yeah, this is Nova. I am not familiar with Nova, the character from the comics. I've seen the character pop up in the odd comic that I've read as a side character. I've never read any of the primary Nova stories. So I'm coming into this completely blind about how they're gonna integrate the thematics of the character and everything. But what I do know is the direction they are taking is pretty unique compared to other heroes we've seen. And I'm really pumped for what I've seen in terms of what I like to do when I play Marvel Champions in my play style, and how that's going to mesh with Nova. So let's not waste any more time. There's also a really, let's waste a little bit more time, because there is a huge change to the pack in what we're normally used to. So we are getting a modular encounter set in a hero pack, which is the first time this has ever happened. I've yet to completely confirm. It might be that someone's confirmed it on a forum or something like that, but based on the information I have when I'm recording this, I don't know if that's replacing some of the additional player cards we normally get, that instead we're getting a modular set. I would imagine that's sort of what's happening. It is a 6-card modular set, so it might be that we're getting that instead of some of the additional cards we normally get, or we're only getting some limited cards that only have to have 1 or 2 copies. Not 100% sure yet, but really exciting that they're including a modular set. I'm wondering if that's going to be something they do for every pack this cycle, if that'll be this, additional way to, normally we get the villain, the Nemesis Minion, and the Nemesis set to sort of tie into the thematics of that character. Getting an additional modular encounter set that you can now include in any scenario you do that ties into that hero is a phenomenal idea. Honestly, now that I think about it, this should have been happening a long time ago. Every hero could have had their own unique modular set, and it just so much customization to the game. So really cool. We'll get into those cards as well, but we're going to kick things off, of course, with the alter ego, which is a Sam Alexander. So he's got a recovery of 3, hand size 6, hit points 10. The alter ego action is important here. That is, spend 1 resource of any type to search your deck and discard pile for Supernova Helmet, add it to your hand, put it into play instead if you paid for this ability using a wild resource. So everything to do with Nova's thematics and abilities are tied to wild resources. If you use wild resources, you're going to get way bigger benefits, and in some cases, it is the entire thing that the hero has been crafted around. So the fact that you want to try to have wild resources in your deck and a ton that you can pull from is going to be interesting in terms of how you deck build for the character. So the other big thing with Nova is the Supernova Helmet. That is the only upgrade that is in the entire signature set of cards for Nova. So it is the one upgrade you're going to be using, and as you can probably imagine, it is tied to wild resources. So to better understand this alter ego action, let's jump right into the helmet before we go to the hero side. Supernova's helmet is a 1-cost upgrade. Nova gains the aerial trait, hero resource, exhaust Supernova Helmet to generate a wild resource. So you're going to have a guaranteed wild resource, which is going to come in handy for some of these cards we're going to look at, coming from Supernova Helmet, and you're going to have a really reliable source to get Supernova Helmet, because you can just basically do it on the very first turn of the game and make sure you have it in play. You don't have to hope you draw into it. That is going to be an upgrade you can pretty much count on to have, and it's going to be key to Nova's success. So one more time, let's jump into the hero side before we jump into his actual signature cards. Hero Nova is a 1 thwart, 1 attack, 2 defense, He is the champion trait, which will come into play for a couple things. Response after you use one of Nova's basic powers, sword attack or defense, ready Supernova Helmet, which is going to allow you to potentially get 2 wild resources in a single turn, which again, we'll see why that's so important. So the stat line is pretty minimal. That's pretty low stat line, all things considered. You get the extra point in defense, but otherwise it's really low attack and thwart, but there are going to be some other ways you can find to deal damage or remove threat, especially because you're always going to have that helmet in play. I shouldn't say always, but even if you lose the helmet, have to discard it for some reason because something says to discard an upgrade, for instance, you are going to have a reliable way to get that back by switching to Alter Ego and basically just grabbing it back. So really exciting. I can already see the thematics and everything tying in with even just the hero Alter Ego and this helmet. Let's jump into some of the cards and see how this actually plays together. So first one we have here is an event. It's a 2-cost event called Lightspeed Flight. This is a thwart event. It's a superpower, which is important for some of the cards that we've seen in the past. Double the number of wild resources generated while paying for this card. What that means is that if you pay for this card using a single wild resource, it pays for the 2 costs by itself because it doubles. So using just Supernova's helmet pays for this outright, which means that it's technically a 1-cost card. And that is pretty amazing when you see that the ability is to hero action remove 3 threat. You can reliably have 3 threat removal for 1, and we're going to get into some other combo stuff where basically there's going to be some other ways to get these event cards back for multi-use. So really cool card, really reliable. The fact that you're going to be able to remove 3 threat for 1 really reliably. I mean, it's a 2-cost event, but honestly, from what I'm seeing here, most times you're not going to be paying 2 for this. The only time you really wouldn't, especially because you're going to be able to ready Supernova's helmet using the hero card by just using a single basic attack or thwart, you're going to get 2 uses out of it. So even if there's 2 events in your hand you want to play that have this doubling ability, you're probably going to be able to play them both. So I would say more times than not, you're going to get this at a reduced cost. The only time you wouldn't is if you've had to discard the helmet for some reason and you haven't had a chance to get it back yet. Otherwise, you can pretty much look at these as being 1 less cost. The next one we're going to jump into is this has a similar ability. This is Pot Shot. So this is a 2-cost event. Double the number of wild resources generated while paying for this card. Deal 4 damage to an enemy. So again, 1 cost to deal 4 damage. Really, really good. I haven't done the calculations on the numbering on the bottom of the cards to see how many copies we're getting of these. But if this is something we're getting a couple copies of or 3 copies of even, doing that much damage for such a low cost, and when really all you have to do is just have wild resources where Nova has so many opportunities to generate wild resources. This is going to be a really fun hero to just constantly every turn be able to easily deal damage, remove thwart, and remove threat, and do it all for super low cost to potentially do other things in your turn and pay for some other expensive allies or cards or whatever the case may be. So this is a really exciting combo environment we're seeing here with Pot Shot and with Lightspeed Flight and with readying the Nova's helmet multiple times, doing your basic attacks and thwarts. There's a ton of combo in here that you can say, I'm going to do this to ready the helmet, to use Pot Shot, to then ready the helmet, to then use it's just, I love combo type stuff in Marvel Champions, and the way that this one's flowing with these really quick playing events is really, really exciting. So I love how this all works together. So that being said, let's jump into the signature ally, which is a hero we've seen in the game before, and that is Miss Marvel. So Miss Marvel is a 3-cost ally with 3 health. She is a champion and an inhuman, 1 thwart, 1 attack, a consequential damage on each. I'm talking too fast. Hero response after you play an event, exhaust Miss Marvel and deal 1 damage to her, return that event to your hand. This is super, super crucial because what you're going to want to do with this obviously is try to minimize the damage that you're taking from consequential damage and have Miss Marvel in play, and even from blocking. Ideally, I should just say, ideally what I would think you'd want to do with Miss Marvel is essentially use her ability twice. So twice be able to, after you play an event, exhaust her, deal a damage to her, and get that event back, especially if it's one of the events we just looked at where you're dealing 4 damage for 1. That could end up being a huge snowball turn. If you do that twice, she has 1 damage or 1 health left on her. At that point, you can block some sort of attack and have her die off that way. So I would imagine that would be the most proficient way to use her. Obviously, there's tons of different ways you can do that, and you could be upgrading her and doing things as well. But even just at a base level like that, that's a really strong ally. I'm really excited to see her combo with everything, and it's pretty nuts that out of all the cards I've talked about, they all combo together. We have Miss Marvel returning the events that you played using the helmet, that you readied using your hero ability, which you got the helmet in play by using your alter ego action. There's this sequence that you're probably going to do. Honestly, my only concern is every, couple starting turns of Nova going to feel very similar because you're doing some of the same things. But even if it does building up his kit or his small little kit, I feel like the fun that's going to come from being able to execute all this stuff and how it's going to feel to be able to deal that much damage with such a low cost is going to sort of make up for that. So Miss Marvel seems to be a really solid ally. I'm really excited to play her. Next up, we have another event. This is a 1 cost superpower, max 1 per round you can only use. Hero action until the end of the round. Each time Nova defeats an enemy or removes the last threat from a scheme, ready Nova and draw 1 card. So this is already a great card. For 1 cost to be able to ready your hero and draw an additional card, you're replacing this card or from a new card in your deck. You're readying your hero, all for just having to time it when you use it to defeat an enemy or fully remove the threat from a scheme. That's already good in and of itself. What makes this amazing is the fact that readying Nova means another use of your helmet, which means that you're going to be able to play even more events from your hands. Maybe it's the cards you draw into you're now able to play. Again, the wild resources are so crucial for Nova. All these cards work so well in conjunction with each other from what I'm seeing that I feel like it's just going to be such a satisfying hero to play. And sometimes there's some heroes I enjoy playing, but I'd be the first to admit they feel a little bit disjointed and turns sometimes come around and you're like, well, what am I doing here? I guess I'm soaking up this hit. I guess I'm doing this, whatever. Nova just feels like you have this strategy of if you have access to wild resources, you're going to have a good time and you're going to be able to do a lot more. And the more you can ready Nova with cards like this or, return events with Miss Marvel, the more you're going to get down on your turn for cheap. So really, really excited about Unleash Nova Force. I think that's a really, really solid card for his kit. I'm really curious to see how many copies of this we get in. Again, I could probably do some of the math on some of these numbers and try to figure it out, but you guys usually do that for me, and you guys are better at it anyway. So let me know if you have already figured out how many copies of some of these cards are in the deck. I'd love to hear. So next up, we have a really neat card here. Again, it's just his hero cards are blowing me away. Connection to the Worldmind. So this is a resource card. Connection to the Worldmind does not count toward your hand size. How many times have you played Marvel Champions and had some of these amazing resource cards, like even the ones in Captain Marvel's deck and stuff like that, and you have it and it's just the wrong time? You're like, well, I really have nothing I can do with this turn, or I don't need all 3 of these resources. I don't need 2 resources. And you either have to play it and not use everything, or you have to discard it, or you have to hold it in your hand and hope that you can use it on a future turn, and it's clogging up your hand, right? Connection to the Worldmind is a wild resource, which is amazing for Nova, so it's exactly what you want to have in your hand, and it does not take up a hand size, which means when this is in your hand, you essentially have +1 to your hand size is the best way to look at this. If you, like, I don't know how many copies of this there are in the deck. If there's 2, you could technically have 2, additional hand size, but that is going to allow you to do so much more in your turn because not only do you have more cards to work with, you have access to wild resources that are going to for sure have targets to use because you still have your regular hand size to deal with as well. So unbelievable card for this deck. I mean, this whole wild resource system is already really exciting and there's a lot of opportunities. Adding this into it is just next level. I absolutely adore this card. Okay, so now we're going to jump into the aggression cards that we were unveiled. This is an aggression pack, and there are some pretty cool aggression cards in here. The first one is an ally. You know how much I love allies. This is the Locust, another character I'm not familiar with, but the card is really solid. So this is a 2-cost ally, 2 health, 1 thwart, 1 attack. It's a champion card, and you can only play it if your identity has the champion trait. That's the one downside to this card. We were actually, I noticed some people even talking about it in the All You Can Board Discord, which we just started, about how it's such a solid card. It's almost too bad that it's, restricted to the champion trait. Over time, again, with some of these cards that are restricted to traits, even the one we've seen cards restricted to the Mystic trait, it seems, or the Guardian trait, like it seems very limiting. But over time, I'm sure we're going to get more and more cards that have some of these traits, especially things like Champion, where all of a sudden it's going to feel like, yes, it's restrictive, and I can't include this in maybe with some of my favorite decks or favorite heroes I play with, but you're still going to have a slew of options. I don't actually know offhand how many champions we've seen in the game. That's one of those things I just don't have, at the ready. But let me know if you've done the research. Let me know how many there are, and even if there isn't a lot, I'm sure we're going to get more, especially because they're including cards like this. So anyways, getting onto the ability, hero response after the Locust enters play, add 1 aggression event from your discard pile to your hands. You're essentially drawing a card from your discard, but it's a targeted tutor is what I've, that's usually referred to for Magic the Gathering. You're essentially being able to grab a specific type of card. So if you're have built your deck in a way where you have really important aggression events, or some of that is key to your strategy, or you really need one, you're essentially being able to draw a card, but it's the exact type of card you want or are looking for, or you have a choice from a selection of cards in that pool. It's from your discard pile, so you're going to get multi-use on these. So if you've played a key aggression card, the Locust is going to be able to grab it back for you. That is a really solid ability for a 2-cost ally that can also be a chump blocker. I understand why they've attached this stipulation of champion trait, because I feel like if that wasn't on there, this is getting pretty close to being in the realm of just why would you not always include this in your aggression decks, because you have a chump blocker that's always going to draw you a card that you're looking for. So I understand why they did that, but again, I'm really excited to use them in a bunch of champion identity decks, and it's really cool that they're including some cards that target them that way. But we'll see how restrictive that is over time. All right, next card. I'm really pumped about this one, and I'll tell you why. It's because Ariel needs to get more respect for how much we've seen it pop up, especially in the last couple. This is Pitchback. It's a 1-cost event that you can only play if you have the Ariel trait, which Nova does have access to with his helmet. Hero response: after your hero attacks, deal 4 damage to an enemy. Not the enemy they've attacked, but any enemy of your choice. For 1. So that is really, really good. And for Ariel cards to work, they have to have this added benefit, because Ariel is something that not every hero has access to. Sometimes it is restrictive, or you have to hope you draw the right card to give yourself Ariel, like Vision, for instance. So being able to get this extra oomph out of your cards is really important, and Pitchback's really good. If you're attacking, you're already dealing some damage to one enemy, now you can deal 4 damage to that same enemy or any enemy you want for a single cost. Really, really good. I'm excited to see how it plays in Nova, but I'm also really pumped to take it back and do an aggression Vision build potentially, or any of the other Star-Lord, different heroes we've seen that have access to Ariel. Even a hero as old as Wasp. Is old. It's like a year ago, almost a year to the date, I think. Wasp has access to an Ariel trait that at the time it felt like it didn't really do anything. Going back and doing an aggression build and including cards like Pitchback could be really cool to try to experiment and see how the decks look. Next up, we have 1x1. This is a 1-cost event as well. Hero action: deal 2 damage to an enemy. If this attack defeats that enemy, deal 2 damage to an enemy again. And again, that could be a different enemy. So this is an interesting card. Basically, you want to use this against minions. I mean, it's possible that you could wait until the villain's one of his early stages is at 1 or 2 health. Kill that villain, and then also deal damage to a minion or the next stage, whatever the case may be. But I think your ideal target here is you have some minions in play that are low in health, and you're able to pick off a couple by splitting this damage. So it's not always going to be effective. You're not going to include this in every aggression deck. But if you're playing against Ultron, if you're playing against decks that have a lot of small minions in play that you're having to manage with as few resources as possible, this is a really cheap way to potentially pick off 2 of them. So I think this is one you include in those specific situations and build your deck around. Not build your deck around that card, but when you're building your deck around a villain, you include that card. Fluid Motion. This is an aggression upgrade card. It's 1 cost as well. Lots of really cheap cards in this pack, which is really exciting to me. So this is a hero response. After you play an attack event, exhaust this card. Your hero gets +1 attack until the end of the phase, max 1 per attack event. So you can't do this on multiple times on the same attack event. This seems pretty good. I mean, it's a straight up, you're just adding +1 attack until the end of the phase to your hero. So if you find yourself frequently playing attack events, if you're playing a hero that has a lot of them and you're going to be doing that a lot, every time you do it, you're just getting a free +1 attack. So for Nova, who only has 1 attack, boosting that to a 2 is a pretty big deal, because he actually is able to be a little bit more effective, because right at his baseline he's not. I wouldn't say this is overly overpowered, but getting this out early in one of the early turns and being able to, if over the course of 8 turns you're able to use this every turn, for instance, that's 8 damage right there, which is nothing to sneeze at. That could be the difference maker, especially with some of the minions in play that you're dealing with, or just when you're getting really close to beating the villain and you're on your last legs as well. So Fluid Motion seems pretty good. I don't know how good it is, or really how beneficial it's going to be of a card to want to include in multiple decks. That's something I'm going to have to play test. This one I'm a little bit more unsure of, but it is still pretty cool, and the ability, again, if you get it out early, is really powerful. Okay, this is an interesting one. This is a basic card, and it's called Everyday Hero. So this is a resource card for basic. It does generate a wild resource, which again for Nova specifically is a huge deal. And the ability is really unique. It says, while your identity has the civilian trait, which is something that Nova's alter ego has, this card can be spent for any player and gains the text response: after you spend this card for a player, heal 1 damage from that player's identity. So what this means is that even if I'm not the active player and I'm playing multiplayer, and the person I'm playing with is trying to pay for something, I can help them pay for it with Everyday Hero, and it's a wild resource, which is really flexible, and I'm going to be able to heal 1 damage from their identity by doing so. I can also still use this on my turn as a regular wild resource, which again for Nova is a phenomenal thing to have access to. But that is a really interesting, we've seen, you know, the alliance cards that allow you to sort of help someone else pay for costs, or, you know, just jointly pay for a card. This is a specific card that just this one card can be used to help other players. I really like that. I like that they're including these cards that have really beneficial abilities for multiplayer or two-handed solo, whatever you want to look at it as. I think that there's been a lot of cards and a lot of talk about their support of solo. I think it's just as important to support multiplayer and give tools to people who play multiplayer often. This is a really cool card that I'm excited to try out. Next up, we have No Quarter. This is back to aggression. I guess I did this in a bit of a weird order here, but this is No Quarter. So this is a 2-cost event that has a requirement that you have to pay for with a fist resource, a strength resource. Hero action attack, deal 4 damage to an enemy. For each point of excess damage dealt to that enemy by this attack, discard the top card of your deck and add each aggression card discarded this way to your hand. Really interesting card here because you have to really... It's not just good enough to build your deck in such a way that you have a bunch of aggression cards. I mean, if you're building an aggression deck, you're going to have a bunch of red cards in there. But you also have to be aware of what you've discarded when you're using this, what's in your hand, and how many aggression cards you think are left in your deck. If you think, I think I've seen all my aggression cards, this would just discard cards on top of your deck and end up being a huge miss and just almost a penalty for dealing 4 damage for 2, which you really shouldn't have a penalty attached to it. So this is going to be one of those, and it has a requirement. So I feel like this is going to be very situational. There's going to be times you play this and you might get, you know, 2 aggression cards added to your hand, which could allow you to do a whole bunch more stuff this turn, and that's fantastic. There's going to be other times where you literally just discard cards off the top of your deck. So you had a penalty of discarding cards, you had a requirement attached to this card, and all you got from it was doing 4 damage for 2. I'm not completely convinced this is going to be a good card. It's going to require specific deck building. It's going to be and some really situational awareness of what your deck is looking like and what's left in it, or what you think is left in it, for this to be effective. That being said, when it lands, that is a really strong ability to be able to get that free card draw, specifically of aggression events that you can then play on that turn or use as resources. I think that's really powerful. I just don't know how often I'm willing to take that risk. Sometimes I want the more sure things, whereas this has a bit more of a luck factor tied to it. So I mentioned the big thing about this pack is that it's the first time we're getting a modular encounter set in a hero pack, which is something I've seen talked about, and well, what if they did this? What if they did that? It's definitely been brought up, and now they are officially doing it. We have a 6-card modular encounter set that is all around Armadillo. Armadillo, I'm assuming, because again, I haven't read the Nova comics, is probably one of the main villains, or, you know, one of the frequent villains of the Nova comics series, or in some ways associated with Nova. This is a really tough modular encounter set. So Armadillo, the actual minion card itself, is a 1 scheme, 2 attack, 8 health elite minion, which is very, very strong. Has toughness, so it comes with a tough status card. But not only that, Armadillo can have any number of tough status cards on him. Not only on, so at first when I read that, I was like, okay, he can have any number of tough status cards. Does that mean that every time I do a damage, only removes 1? That is correct. If he has 4 tough status cards, you have to do damage 4 separate times to be able to remove that 4. And remember, that doesn't mean I can do an attack of 4 to remove all 4. That means that doing an attack of 4 is negated and removes 1 tough status card. So you have to do 4 attacks just to remove those tough status cards. And in the meantime, he might be getting more on him because he has multiple ways to get them. So this is a really tough minion with 8 health, and to have that ability, and there's still one more ability associated with it, which is after Armadillo activates against you, you give him a tough status card. This is going to take a lot of allies and your heroes and all the players really focusing on Armadillo. And what I'm thinking here is that in solo, this is going to be particularly nasty, because if I'm playing multiplayer with 2 other people, that's 2 other people I can rely on our whole round to chip away at these tough status cards. That makes it a little bit more manageable. In a solo environment, if he somehow got 3 or 4 tough status cards, I have to rely on the fact that I can either do multiple attacks on that turn with Nova before he activates against me and gets more tough status cards, or I have allies in play and we have to put all our focus onto this 1 minion. This is going to be a tough one. This is one I'm excited to really include and see how tough it really gets, because right now, on face value right now, this seems like a really tough minion. And that's only one in the modular encounter set of 6. So the other one we got unveiled here is Rollin, which is an attachment attached to Armadillo. But if Armadillo is not in play, you search the encounter deck and discard pile for Armadillo, put him into play, engaged with you, and attach this to him. So you're not getting off the hook here. If he's not in play, he's coming into play, and this is attaching to him immediately. While Armadillo has a tough status card, characters cannot defend against his attacks. This is just like, I feel like this modular encounter set is going to be such a pain, but in the best way possible. I love these tough, difficult modular encounter sets, and it gives them +2 attack on top of that. So again, this modular set is seeming really powerful, but what an exciting thing to include in just a hero pack. You're getting tons of variety here. And the last one we got is Tough It Out. This is a treachery card that says when revealed, give Armadillo and the villain each a tough status card. If one or fewer tough status cards were given this way, this card gains Surge on top of it. Again, nasty additional way to put tough status cards on Armadillo. If it's not bad enough, he has 8 health and it's going to take a few attacks to chip him down. I have a feeling there's going to be some games where you have other things you're worrying about. Next thing you know, you're going to look at Armadillo and say, this thing's got like 5 status cards on it. Like, am I even bothering with Armadillo? Am I just dealing with him every turn? Like, what is my game plan here? This is going to be really the only upside here is that Armadillo only has 2 attack base, which again just means that you can sustain some hits and it's okay if it's taken a while to get rid of them. But there is some nasty stuff in this modular encounter set. I'm really pumped about everything I'm seeing here. So that is Nova. What an exciting pack. I'm always blown away. I always mention all the time how interesting I think it is that they take things that are already in the game and find a way to build a hero around that thing and make us view it in a different way. That's what they've done with the Wild Resource now. The Wild Resource was already an element that was in the game that was used for the fact that it had this flexibility tied to it and can apply to cards that say you must use a specific type of resource. Nova is now taking the concept of wild resources and making it the entire foundation of the hero, and in a really exciting, interesting way. I love everything I'm seeing here. Usually I can tell from a preview where my hype levels are and whether I think this is going to be a hero I play, for playtesting and initially and then sort of never play again, or if it's going to be one I can keep coming back to. I can pretty confidently say I would be surprised if this isn't one I want to keep coming back to. The artwork, the mechanics, the entire flow of the combos and everything is everything I love about Heroes and Marvel Champions. I am so pumped. Cannot wait. We are getting this in May, so we do have a little bit of a wait ahead, but I'm sure it's going to be worth it based on what we've seen today. So that is Nova. Thank you so much for watching. This is the first preview for Marvel Champions of 2022, and if you have not heard, today when I'm filming this was our 2-year anniversary. We have posted a video unveiling our Patreon, our Discord, our merchandise, a whole bunch of other stuff. Check it out if you haven't. If you want to engage with us, the link for the Discord is in the description, so make sure you join the Discord. There's a Marvel Champions community in there that's already active. People are talking. That's where I found out Nova was even previewed, and I'm going to be using our Discord to find out about these releases. So there's a really vibrant community in there with a lot of cool people that we're talking about board games and pets and Marvel Champions and Keyforge and anything you can imagine. So join that. And again, if you're wanting to support us in any way, there's some options in the description for Patreon and PayPal and merchandise, but none of that's required. It's completely optional, only if you'd like to. Otherwise, thank you so much for being here and for watching another video. I hope we get more announcements really soon as we lead up to the Sinister Motives release, which obviously is going to be a really exciting time. Thanks for watching. See you next time.